October 18th, 2024, global leaders gathered under bright lights. Calm music and silent tension, the world was tired of conflict, hunger, and growing inequality. This summit was meant to be just another televised show of handshakes and half-promises. But then something unusual happened. Barack Obama, now a respected statesman, walked in with quiet confidence. He was calm, composed, and expected to speak. Later cameras shifted toward him. Reporters leaned in then from the far left section of the hall. A name was whispered across delegate seats. That's Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso. Entered not with a grand gesture, but with something deeper, presence. He wasn't in a tailored suit. He wore his military uniform, clean and modest, no gold. Pins, no diamonds, just sincerity. Some diplomats rolled their eyes. What does a man from a small African country have to offer someone? Whispered near the back, but Traoré didn't flinch. He took his seat. Quietly, his hands folded, eyes fixed on the stage. No one could have imagined that in just 1 hour he would silence the entire room and bring Barack Obama to tears. His name wasn't on the official speakers list. The summit was focused on global unity, and post-pandemic recovery speeches were scripted. But a quiet moment shifted everything during a break. A young female delegate from Niger stood up, voice trembling. "I know this isn't protocol, but may Captain True say a few words?" The room shifted uncomfortably. Eyes darted. One organizer whispered into a headset. Obama, seated calmly, nodded once. "I believe we should hear him," said. Murmurs rippled. A few clapped. Most watched silently. Traoré stepped forward. No notes, no teleprompter. As he stood behind the podium, cameras zoomed in. Journalists prepared to tune out, expecting another vague statement. Then he began. "I come here not to talk about policies. I come to speak of pain and the promise born from it." The room stilled. His voice was soft but sharp, his accent clear, honest. He looked directly at Obama, then at the cameras. "In the past year, I've seen boys digging through trash for food. I've seen girls forced into marriage at 13 to survive, not in a war zone, in villages forgotten by men in suits." Silence. Even the translator stopped typing. He wasn't speaking politics. He was speaking truth. Obama shifted in his seat. Traoré continued. "You all speak of rebuilding economies," he said, eyes steady. "But what do we say to a mother who watches her child die? Not because of war, not because of disease, but because $1 billion aid project never left the boardroom." A single breath echoed in the vast hall. No African child should grow up believing that their life is cheaper than a child in Paris or New York. He paused. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from holding back emotion. "I was not born to lead," he whispered. "I was born in a small home with no electricity. My father died carrying bricks for men who never learned his name." Obama leaned forward slightly. His eyes didn't blink, his jaw clenched. "But I stand here," Traoré said, "because even the forgotten can rise." Someone sniffled in the crowd then. Traoré looked straight at Obama. "Sir, you once said we are the change we seek, but change doesn't come from Washington or Paris. It comes when the world stops looking at Africa like a patient and starts listening to her as a prophet." Obama closed his eyes. Something inside him broke, and the entire world felt it. Traoré's voice dropped lower, softer, but somehow even heavier. "I had a brother once," he said. "His name was Khalifa." Every ear in the room was open. Every eye on him. "We were just kids. We played with old tires and chased goats. We never dreamed of airplanes or computers, just rice and maybe meat on Sundays." He smiled faintly, then swallowed hard. "When Khalifa was 10, he walked 5 miles to find bread. He never came back." Obama leaned back. Something in his chest tightened. Someone stabbed him over one piece of dry bread. That's what poverty does. It doesn't just steal food, it steals dignity. It teaches children to fight, not live. The translator in the back had stopped typing. She was crying. Traoré looked around the room. "I know what people think when they look at my country. Poor, violent, unstable. But we are not statistics. We are not your project. We are people with names, with graves, with memories." He paused. "My brother died for bread. But I'm here today to feed a different hunger. A hunger for justice. And still." Obama didn't blink. His eyes were locked. Something was unfolding. Something the world wasn't ready for. The air felt heavier. Some delegates turned off their Phones, some began to take notes not because they had to, but because they wanted to remember. Trey hadn't raised his voice once, but his words echoed like thunder. A woman from Norway whispered to her aide, "Why haven't we heard of this man before?" Across the room, a South African diplomat wiped her glasses, her fingers. Trembling journalists stopped tweeting, cameras zoomed in, and Barack Obama. He hadn't moved. His left hand rested over his mouth, his eyes glossy, his soul somewhere else entirely. Traoré continued in Burkina Faso, "We don't ask for pity, we ask for partnership when your companies take our gold. We ask why can't our schools have books when your deals are signed behind closed doors. We ask why can't our hospitals have electricity." He looked to the side. The large screen showed silent stats behind him. World hunger, child mortality, illiteracy rates, but Trey didn't point at them. Instead, he tapped his chest. "The real crisis is not out there, it's in here in our hearts." And for the first time, Barack Obama slowly reached for a tissue. He wasn't just listening, he was breaking. It was one tear, quiet, slow. But it changed everything. Obama didn't wipe it right away. He let it fall as if it deserved the weight. The entire room froze. Journalists lifted cameras, but no one dared speak, Tro noticed. But didn't stop. Instead, his voice became gentler, like he was speaking only to Obama. "Now, sir, I know you've carried many burdens. I know you tried to do what you could when you could, but I must ask, do you believe we did enough?" Obama exhaled slowly, deeply. Traoré stepped down from the podium. He didn't wait for applause. There wasn't any, not because they didn't want to clap, because no one could move a silence thicker than any speech filled the hall. Then Obama stood, and the room inhaled as one. He walked to the mic, placed both hands on the edge, and looked straight at Traoré. "You asked a question," he said quietly, "and I don't have an answer." He paused. "But I've never heard anything like what you just said." He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to sit down and listen to this man, really listen." And just like that, the world began to change. Tro sat down slowly after Obama's words. But his mind wasn't in that room anymore. He wasn't in Geneva. He was back home in Dori, a small village in Burkina Faso. He remembered the day he found Khalifa's body. A neighbor had knocked on the door with eyes full of sorrow. His mother dropped the wooden spoon in her hand and screamed before the words were even spoken. "Ibrahim," the neighbor said, "he's gone." There had been no ambulance, no justice, no funeral suit, just a torn shirt, red soil, and a silent grave. And Ibrahim, just 12 years old, stood there trembling, holding a cup of water. Not knowing how to cry, the image of that day returned in that quiet summit hall. A tear formed again, but this time he didn't fight it. Beside him, the South African delegate leaned over and whispered, "You don't know what you just did. You reminded us why we came here." Tro nodded without speaking. He wasn't here for applause. He was here for Khalifa and somewhere across the oceans. Millions of viewers watching this summit live were already crying, and they didn't even know the most painful truth. Not yet. The next morning, the summit hall was buzzing overnight. Ibrahim Traoré's speech had gone viral news. Channels around the world were looping the moment Obama wiped his tears. The clip had crossed 100 million views in under 12 hours, but no one was ready for what Traoré would do next. He stepped onto the stage again, uninvited, unannounced. "I want to share something," he said, holding up a small flash drive. The room stilled. He plugged it in. The screen behind him flickered. Then a shaky video appeared. It was filmed on a phone. The voice was muffled by wind. It showed a school. No walls, no roof. Just sticks, kids on stones, and a woman teaching math on a chalkboard made of cardboard. "This is Eurosuga Primary School," he said, one of 4,000 schools in Burkina Faso, with no proper building, no desks, no toilets. Then came the twist. "I visited this school last month. One child walked barefoot for 3 hours to be there," she told me. "Captain, I want to be a doctor so I can stop children from dying like my brother." Gasps filled the room. Obama covered his mouth again. The girl in the video, her name was
8.
Who? And she would soon change everything after the video ended. The hall was silent again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was grief. It was guilt. It was awakening. Traoré held up a piece of paper. "She gave me this." He said she asked me to read it if I ever met someone powerful enough to help. He unfolded the letter. "Dear Big Leader," he read. Slowly, "I don't know if you know me. My name is Fatu. I am 9 years old. My brother died in my hands last year because we don't have a hospital. I tried to carry him on my back, but he stopped breathing. Someone audibly sobbed in the audience. I don't want toys, the letter continued. I want books and shoes and a chair, so... I don't sit on ants, Tro. Stopped, his voice cracked. She ended it with this. If you help, I will be a doctor, and I will help someone else, I promise. He folded the letter slowly, then he said the quietest sentence in the room. Fatu is watching this summit right now on a neighbor's TV. And just like that, the room broke, but the world it was. Only just beginning to listen, the summit was already emotional. But what happened next was something no one expected. Barack Obama stood up. He didn't wait for applause or acknowledgement. He just asked, "May I speak?" The moderator nodded slowly. Obama walked toward the mic. His face looked different, exposed raw, not like the poised speaker. The world had come to know he placed both hands on the podium and looked directly at Trop. When I was president, he began. I saw pain, but I never cried in public, not once. He paused, but yesterday I cried because I realized something. I'd never listened deeply enough, not to voices like Fatu's, not to leaders like Ibrahim. The room was stunned then, he added. I once visited a school in Kenya with no roof, but I left. I didn't stay the night. I didn't sit on the dirt. I didn't hold a sick child in my arms. The way he has. Obama turned to Traoré and said something. Nobody expected you, reminded me who I wanted to be when I was young. He walked off stage and the world saw something rare. The most powerful people in the room had gone silent. Later that day, Tro gave one final update. It wasn't part of the summit's official program, but the world was watching now, millions from phones and TVs. He pulled out an old photograph. This, he said, is what we call a hospital in Jibo. The image hit like a hammer, a cracked wall, a rusted four-pole, and two nurses using mobile phone flashlights to deliver a baby. There was a night, Tro said quietly, when the generator failed. A boy named Sif needed oxygen. The nurse ran outside screaming for help. None came. He paused. I held that boy's hand. I told him a story, even though I knew he might not survive the hour. The audience froze. Salif passed away at 2:17 a.m. His last words were, "Tell my mom I didn't cry." The summit hall broke into tears. Trao didn't raise his voice once, but in that stillness and that unbearable truth, he forced every leader present to feel what it meant to be forgotten, what it meant to be poor, and what it meant to die without the world noticing until now, hours after. Traoré's final remarks. Something unexpected happened. A text message from Barack Obama. It was short. It read, "We need to do something immediately." Looked at it, then looked up at the cameras. He didn't say anything, but his eyes glistened again behind the scenes. Something had shifted quietly, powerfully that evening. Social media exploded. Istan with Traoré began trending in over 30 countries. But more than that, people started doing something real. A teacher in New York launched a fundraiser to build a roof for Fatu's school. A nurse in Brazil posted a video vowing to donate her salary to medical aid in Burkina Faso. An 11-year-old boy in Tokyo mailed his shoes cleaned and polished to the Burkina Faso embassy. This wasn't just emotion anymore, it was action. Obama and Traoré went back behind closed doors that night. No cameras, no press, just two men, one from Chicago, one from Ouagadougou. Both crying again, and this time they were planning something that would shake the world. The next morning, as the summit resumed, a quiet envelope was passed to Traoré by a young volunteer. It was handrest. The handwriting was shaky, but careful. He opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from Fatu, the young girl whose voice had been read during his first speech. She wrote, "Dear Uncle Ibrahim, I saw you on my uncle's phone. You read my words. I never thought the world would listen to me. When I heard you say my name, I screamed. My whole village screamed." She drew a picture beside her signature, a stick figure of Traub standing next to a smiling girl with books at the bottom. She added, "You made me believe I can be president too, if I become president. I will fix all our broken chairs and give every girl her own shoes." Traoré held the letter with both hands, and for the first time in public, his voice cracked. Even the translators paused. Obama, watching from the front row, placed his hand over his heart. This wasn't a speech anymore. It was a moment that felt bigger. Then politics bigger than power. Later that day, a journalist from Denmark released unseen footage that shocked the world. It wasn't of the summit, it was a hidden camera video from 6 months earlier inside a clinic in northern Burkina Faso. It showed Traoré without security, without press bandaging the leg of a crying child, no medical gloves, no camera crew. Just him kneeling on the dusty floor, whispering to calm the child. The journalist captioned it, "This is the man the world ignored until now." Within hours, the footage hit 50 million views. Celebrities began resharing it. Doctors Without Borders issued a public statement. "We've never seen a sitting head of state do this, not off camera," Obama tweeted. "This is what leadership looks like, not show, not talk, just love." Traoré never commented on the video. When asked why he didn't publicize the visit, he simply said that child didn't need a president, he needed a father. The crowd that once watched him with curiosity now watched him with tears in their eyes. The world had already been stirred, but then the final blow came during the last session of the summit. A UN representative received breaking news and rushed to the stage, interrupting. "The schedule there has been an earthquake," she said in Eastern Burkina Faso. "Several schools and clinics are down. Hundreds feared trapped gasps. Silence cameras turned to." "Tro," he stood. "I must go," he said firmly. The moderator asked, "But, President, Tro, you're scheduled to close the summit." He looked out at the sea of global leaders and said, "My summit is where my people are trapped under dust." He turned and walked out, no grand exit, no hesitation. Obama stood and began clapping, one by one. Every person in the hall joined in it. Wasn't applause, it was respect. Later that night, satellite footage showed Traoré on site wearing no suit, no medals, digging rubble with his bare hands beside local villagers. CNN called it the most selfless act of modern leadership. A news anchor in Ghana simply said, "That man didn't just speak to the world, he showed us what it means to be human." As rescue efforts unfolded after the earthquake, international media caught a moment that gripped the world. A boy no older than 6 was pulled from the rubble. After 18 hours covered in dust, his tiny arms clung to the first figure he saw. It was Traoré. He didn't flinch, he didn't look to the cameras, he simply whispered, "You are safe now." The boy asked, "Are you my father?" Traoré froze, his eyes welled up. He nodded slowly and replied, "Today I am." That clip broke the internet, not because it was staged, but because it was real. That night, in a silent studio in London, a BBC anchor teared up on air. In Lagos, school children drew crayon pictures of Tro holding the child from Seoul to S. Paulo. People weren't talking about weapons, policies, or trade. They were talking about love, about humanity, and about a man who led not with pride but with compassion. Obama watched the footage from his home. His voice cracked as he told a journalist, "Now I understand why he said what he said. That boy didn't just get rescued from rubble. He was rescued from a world that forgot how to feel." The summit had officially ended, but one more speaker was invited, unplanned. "Expected?" Obama stood up. "This wasn't on the schedule," he began, "but after what we've witnessed, I think we all need to say something." He turned to Trop and continued, "When you first spoke, you told us power is not the ability to speak over people, it's the courage to kneel beside them. You said a president's job is not to be clapped for, but to be cried on. And then you said something I'll never forget. We are not leaders because we are smart. We are leaders because someone believed." We wouldn't leave when it got ugly. By the end of the quote, Obama's eyes were red. The room stood still. No applause. No noise, just hearts thumping in every chest. Obama walked down the stage and hugged Traoré, and then silently, one by one, the entire summit of world leaders followed, lining up to embrace him. A moment that would never be forgotten. The man from Burkina Faso had done what no one expected. He united the world without ever raising his voice. Back in Burkina Faso, there were no red carpets, no fireworks, just villagers waiting with candles, holding hands, singing softly in the night. When Traoré returned, he didn't speak. He simply walked through the crowd, hugging the mother's blessing, the children, and placing his forehead against elders in silence. Then with the smallest microphone, he said, "I didn't go to the summit to speak. I went to remind the world that people who are forgotten still feel, still bleed, still dream." He paused, then added, "If I have done anything worth remembering, let it be this, that I never left my people when they needed me most." That night, for the first time in history, a world summit was rebroadcast with subtitles in 63 languages. People cried in buses and offices and schools. A young girl in Sweden posted, "I want to be like him, not famous. Just real. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment below and tell us what part moved. You most like this video if you believe compassion is the highest form of power, and subscribe now because we have more powerful true stories that the world needs to hear. Let's make the world feel again. Let's make it human again together."